You are listening to Radiant Creators, a collaborative project composed of people whose passion, purpose, and dedication requires forging their own unique path of empowerment and livelihood. A Radiant Creator isn't making a living, they are living.
Welcome to Radiant Creators, everybody. Today we have Matt Landman on the show. We've had Matt on 2 times before, and definitely check out those interviews. And so, hello, Matt Landman. Welcome. And this is one of the busiest guys in being an actual activist there is. So, how about a little intro? But we kind of know who you are. But an intro on what you're working on right now, and also, how has your evolution been going since the last time we've talked?
Great question, and I was just thinking about that right before you got me on the line.
I know.
Because it was just this year. It was this year, right? But so much has changed in my life, brother. I'm like, I can't even recognize myself in the mirror, let alone think about where I was when we did an interview around March, I want to say it was. But yes, so much has shifted in my world. For one, I died. Like, seriously, I died in this river, and I had this whole experience, and I came back, and yeah, unreal. I could tell that story, but I've had some unbelievable experiences. I've lived multiple lives in just a couple years. So the life of an activist, yeah, I really just have let go and started to only trust, because I end up in these circumstances and whatnot, where I can't see the forest through the trees, but then after the big picture unravels, I start to see really, why I was there, and nothing is coincidence. Everything is synchronized, and I just have to trust that I'm playing my part. Sometimes I get off of a big radio show, and then I look at the chemtrails, and I'm like, I haven't done anything. They're still there, the chemtrails, and I have to just let it go and still just know that there's a bigger picture, and playing my part. And so since we last spoke, I've spoken at a handful more city hall meetings. I've been doing short videos talking about EMF radiation and bringing that to life. I've launched my clothing line, which was a big hurdle, achievement, mountain that I wanted to jump in the year 2019, because I really want the evolution of the clothing line to evolve into next year when 5G rolls out into some areas, and I want people to have a solution, that's peaceful and proactive, right, instead of reactive, taking the power into their own hands and being actual activists and rocking this futuristic. It's the future of clothing as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, I've gotten that off the ground, so that's really exciting. I actually came up the other day and realized I have to have another movie. Since my film, it's a chronological timeline documentary starting in 1922 that ends when the movie is completed in June of 2017. Well, since June 2017, there's a whole other movie that could be made, so I have to come out with Frankenskies 2. So I launched a crowdfund for that, GoFundMe.com/Frankenskies2. $15 donation gets you a copy of Frankenskies 1, which I love getting the DVDs out there. Anybody who wants to have a screening in their town, I'm really encouraging that. There's a screening coming up in Australia I'm really excited about that I'm not going to be able to go to. But there's a lot of different people stepping up and saying, oh, I saw someone else do a screening, and I can do the same thing, and my town would be really receptive. And it's that little drop of truth, that little truth bomb that you really don't know what's going to happen, but actually you don't have to sit around and wait for that seed to germinate. You drop the seed in the fertile soil knowing that the sun will come up the next day, and you just trust in the process, because we can't do it all, but we can do what we can with what we've got, where we're at, kind of thing. So there's that. I just did a really killer presentation at this conference in Portland. I'm really excited about. It's my best chemtrail presentation thus far. I'm getting really grounded, trying to find where people want to receive the information, and it's definitely not from a frantic point of view. I've really been analyzing people who I'm realizing are likely to be like controlled opposition, which is sad, but it's a reality. The way, I'll pass the mic in a second, but check this out. The way that I see these things is I feel like around the time of the Black Panthers, that they were a threat. And the CIA or whoever is in charge, they didn't want to lose their grip on the control of everybody. Their social engineering machine, they want to control the people. So they infiltrated the Black Panthers, and after that, they were like, never again. And then from that point forth, they, instead of infiltrating, they just originated and controlled the opposition from the get-go. So I think almost every single movement has not only been like completely co-opted, but it's being steered and led by fear, essentially. And no matter what, you just have to take a step back and really discern with your gut and your heart and ask yourself, is this person coming from a place and pitching and putting you in a place of fear? And if the answer is yes, then I advise you just move on. I don't want to, say judge the person or whatever, but as much as I'm already saying judge the person. But I'm just saying move on and find somebody that has you resonating to your highest potential, because with truth, I'm realizing there's such a big hijacking of our timeline, of our destiny, of our truth. And why do they want us resonating in so many layers of falsehoods and propaganda and fake news, this and that? It's because if we're resonating and preaching and existing in falsehood, that's a frequency, And this fakery, we don't want to be resonating in fakery. We want to be resonating in truth and positive love frequency, radiant creator type, manifestor co-creation, amazing frequencies, so that we can draw in more frequencies of like frequencies. Your tribe, your vibe attracts your tribe kind of thing. But it's not just the frequency that you pull in of people. It's what you create around you, what your life will be like, what other things come to you, realizations, epiphanies. You never know what levels of truth and higher vibrations are out there until you start. And it also involves the food that you eat and what kind of TV and everything that you watch, or lack thereof. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. And so much does get hijacked that I have started to see things outside of the polarity of good and evil, where I do think there is good and evil, but I've also started to see things in a very paradoxical way where I don't really recognize it the same way I used to, because I think about, like you mentioned, the Black Panthers in the 60s. That's a complex issue, of course, but did it get co-opted? Yes, but also you look at the 60s and the early 70s themselves and the hippies, and did that get co-opted? Like, how much of that was real and how long, and were the very foundations of it even real? It's almost like it is very hard to know what truth is, but you can. And so really it's just more and more getting into your own truth, and then you see the real truth through all the mischief of timelines and co-opted natures, and it's quite something to take on, because like you mentioned, you're starting to notice the controlled opposition, as you put it, or and that's quite, see, that takes a very, very discerning eye to recognize that.
No kidding. And what I'm seeing is, by discerning and seeing who they are and where they're coming from, I can really see what they're up to, kind of thing. And in my past, in my life, in my journey, it really has been a journey of seeing the dark, to know that there's light, to know that I'm the light, I'm not the dark, and to really find my place and to find my path and to resonate to the highest frequency that I can be, which I think activism and truth is one of the highest frequencies out there. But I didn't mean to interrupt, but I really wanted to interject. You said polarity and duality. That is the game that they play, brother. It's unreal. So take any topic, you name it, and as long as they can control it and make it a dualistic approach, then there's never going to be a victor, because you've got two sides of society pitted against each other by social programming. You can control them. You control the media. You control the source of information, control the minds of the people. You can pin them against each other, no problem. Gulliver's Travels, what a satire. I mean, in a time where you had to literally hide the truth in satire stories so that people could get it and you wouldn't be killed for sharing the truth, Gulliver comes upon an entire civilization that's at war with each other, disputing which side of the egg is the top and which is the bottom, right? And of course, it's just a satire, but that's where we're at. And when you can create duality, is that a chemtrail, is that a contrail? That argument, they're both chemicals. There's not a contrail. I've learned this, and wow, what an epiphany. But that's how they play the game. And I can go into that for an hour in and of itself. There's no contrails. That is a con. And the way that even the English language has been hijacked with these words like contrail, or one that recently I've been so deeply inquisitive on and taken apart, is the word to cure. To cure has a long background, going back thousands of years, when English language has its roots. But it always meant to preserve, like to cure meat. And then recently we've flipped it, and these homonyms, we have a lot of power in our voice, and when you give a word two meanings, wow, this is an interesting segue. I didn't mean to take it right to duality in the word.
I like it.
Right? Check it out. To cure. We've got homonyms. We are co-creators. Our very vibration in which we resonate dictates like what physical form that we embody in. I mean, it's deep, right? I started looking deep into people's eyes and souls as I hand them flyers. And if you are fat and ugly, you're probably not on a high vibration. I'm sorry. It's just the way that it is, how you've incarnated, and the food that you ingest and everything. You can see it in people's eyes, the light that's there or not, And it's really interesting when we're there and we're saying our words, our language has been intercepted and flipped on its head and hijacked. There's so many words we don't know that we're actually saying differently. And to cure has two meanings. It means to cure a disease, but then it also means to preserve, which means the opposite of what we have come to say it as, right? So you get where I'm going, the power of it all. So I've realized in activism, as long as there can be two sides, the anti-vaxxers, well, which side are you going to be on? Are you left or right? Are you Republican or Democrat? I grew up in D.C., and people ask me, are you left or right? And I'm like, you know what? I refuse to even acknowledge what that even means. And they're like, no, really, Matt? And I'm like, yeah, I'm 39 years old. I don't know what left and right means, and I refuse. Like, what, I don't, it's both puppets, and they're both bogus. What am I going to do?
I understand. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I get
I've gotten bamboozled each way. So we get polarized, and then we get in an argument, and the truth is either hidden in the middle or not even right there at all, like the global warming debate. I'm sorry, but has anybody come out and said, aside from me and a few people, that sea levels haven't risen one bit? They say, sea levels have risen, global warming is here, what are we going to do about it? Well, we're going to do this or we're going to do this. And then they bicker over option A or option B, polarizing this argument. But what about the argument of global warming in and of itself? And we're not talking about the heating of the ionosphere with HAARP technology. I mean, all of the weather manipulation, weather control, the chemtrail agenda, if there is any heating, it's that. And erosion of islands and sand wars and Dubai stealing sand from islands to make cities, erosion is not sea level rise. I've lived at zero sea level. I do now. And zero sea level has not changed 1 millimeter. And that polarized debate isn't even there for us because the truth would be on one side, and they don't even want that. You see where I'm going?
Oh, completely. And it's amazing how people are very... I don't have a word to describe it, but I could describe their reaction. And I might say, well, if you have a glass of water and you have ice in it, when the ice melts, does the water level change? So... and they'll just get very, very mad at you. And you say, I'm not even challenging your beliefs. I'm just trying to expound upon the reality that we're, like the context in which we're communicating in a way that doesn't even try to take anything from you or dispute what you're saying. But even broadening the context of a conversation becomes impossible. And that is kind of a state that we're in these days. But something that you mentioned that really speaks to me is, when it comes to peaceful revolutions, I think there's some that are happening, and I know, you are a part of a peaceful revolution. There's many, but you're part of a peaceful revolution, which of course is being an actual activist and speaking about chemtrails and vaccines and 5G, something we should definitely talk about. But also, like for me, I'm very involved in cryptocurrency, and I believe that is a peaceful revolution also. So I mean, I wasn't alive for all of history, but I feel like humanity is moving into a time right now where we are in an evolutionary leap because for the first time that I know of in my lifetime, and the first time that I can really see in history, we are in the midst of peaceful revolution. There are peaceful revolutions happening that are taking apart the centralized control system that enslaves humanity in many, many ways. And since it's non-dualistic, since it's not left, it's not right, it's not, us versus them, it doesn't really exist within a polarity. It is a peaceful revolution, and I think it just kind of like beguiles those power structures, and they don't know how to fight it because you won't fight them from a polarity. What do you think of that?
No kidding. I love it. And there is some non-peaceful stuff going on in Hong Kong right now. It's interesting to see how that has recently evolved with, it's basically an uprising now against the AI and the social engineering, social monitoring program, the social credit system. That in and of itself is a show. This social credit system over there is so out of this world. You're so closely monitored that if you forget to take your birth control, your public points that people can see your profile, your points are deducted because you missed a pill that day. And if you get below a certain threshold, you're turned off from society. No buses, no bank accounts, no food. But back to what you're saying, our very existence and survival and proliferation as this awakened truth activism, actual activist, that's the revolution. Our existence, right? Us being here and being who we are and sharing our light like we're doing right here, right now, that is what I feel is the revolution, because it'll advance this elevation of higher vibrations, because the truth is the highest vibration, or it is up there with all these high frequencies. You start riding that one, like I said, you can start to get to all the other stuff. So yeah, the 5G rollout, unreal, the different opportunities there. I just saw that Encinitas, California is putting up a big fight. Mill Valley, California has stepped in and said, no, we're not letting this into our residential and into near where our homes are. Some towns are doing it and some aren't, and it's giving us the opportunity to get local, because that's all we can do. And I really recommend to people, if you need some help, a little lending hand, you can reach out to me. I've been helping a lot of different towns and communities. Basically what you do is you start at your county level, and you end up at your city or town, unless you can do a county-wide ordinance. But it's just like anything else. If you want to put a stop sign or a traffic light in your neighborhood because, there's too many cars speeding through, you go to the town and you get it on the agenda, and then you talk about it, and there's public comment, and the city planner comes in and says, blah, blah, blah. It's just how it goes. And it's the same thing with the cell tower on your street. The cell tower infrastructure for 5G requires a tower. They're going to try to put one every 500 feet. That means there's a good chance it'll be on the telephone or whatever post out front of your house, unless you say something. So it's really given us the opportunity to become activists on a local level, because we can't rely on our federal level or state level governments to protect us from this, because they're actually on board with big telecom, and they're also being controlled and conditioned through compartmentalization and need-to-know basis and all this sort of stuff, how they do it, And there's so many people out there that don't even realize 5G is anything different than the progression from 2G and 3G and 4G, but it's a world of difference. And I know we may have talked about it in the last show, but should I give the nitty-gritty 4 minutes of it all and explain what 5G is? Or
No, I think definitely, because 5G is a great topic, because that's probably on the forefront of most people's minds. And one of the things that, as you give that little description scenario of 5G, one thing I'd ask to ponder while you're doing that is, do you believe that 5G is starting to enter the consensus reality? Because I myself am noticing that maybe people who never caught on to 9/11, chemtrails have never really, sparked their interest. They think fluoride's good for them. They love all their vaccines. They're like, I have all my vaccines, and I make sure my kids have theirs. But something about 5G I'm noticing is perking people's attention that I have never seen spark before. Okay, go for it.
What an amazing opportunity it is in this age of falsehoods for people to finally discern for themselves. A cell tower on my doorstep, you say? Scratching their head? I mean, the fluoride in my water, I didn't notice a difference. And my kids seem to be okay from the vaccines. And I'm not going to bicker with you about clouds or what happened in New York 10 whatever years ago, right? But a cell tower right there, 20 feet from my bedroom window, and you say it's going to radiate 100 times more radiation than current massive cell towers that are far away from my home. What about my property value? What about my kids' longevity and leukemia and brain tumors and stuff? Yeah, it's a whole new ballgame, and it's an amazing opportunity for people to think for themselves. And when I first got on this activism tip, the whole time, Craig, I was like, is it always going to be chemtrails? I was like, no way is it always going to be chemtrails. There's no way I'm just going to be arguing with people about the clouds and telling them that the lines out of the back of jets are actually chemicals. You know, that's a hard one. That's hard. It is. And the control of the conversation is really hard. It's difficult. But then all of a sudden we've got this, geoengineering, the spraying of chemicals out of the back of planes is going to save us from global warming, and that's being posed as a solution. And there's a solar geoengineering governance body in place calling themselves the Solar Geoengineering Governance Regime out of Chicago. So it's like they're governing it, and they're calling themselves a regime to govern it. It's pretty much happening. So that's not really that hard to argue anymore. But the whole time I was thinking to myself, it's got to be something else. It can't just be this. And then I got that evolution there after I came out with the movie, which is another reason why I need to come out with a new one to explain that this is now out of the realm of conspiracy. Like, they're showing you we need to be doing this now. This is a whole new ballgame. It's not just a fringe topic documentary exposing the past and bringing it to the present. It's now the future and the present. We need to discuss it immediately because they want to launch full-scale deployment. Where I live in Northern California, I haven't seen the sun in about 2 weeks. But yes, this opportunity for people to say, well, that's not safe, and I need to think about this because it's right there in their face. It's a different beast, you know. And for me, I've been able to segue into this. It's just been my path, my journey. I ended up in Arizona, where, as you know, that's one of the states that wants to roll out 5G in 2020, they claim, which I think it will require much more infrastructure to get it into small communities and desert, this and that, and mountain communities and all this. But, you know, Kingman and all this, Arizona's a big state. But either way, they claim they want to roll it out, even though this wave can only go a certain distance, so they need massive infrastructure. But yeah, I think it's like I said, it's a great opportunity for the truth to prevail and for people to stand up and think for themselves. So, what is 5G? And I'll make this nice and simple, because the thing was, when I started looking up 5G, I couldn't find anything to sink my teeth into or feel confident to repeat it to my friends, family, and peers, let alone on like a show like this. So I didn't really want to get involved. I couldn't even explain it. So then I had to go to the library, honestly. I had to get some books because the disinformation was so deep, with so much propaganda and falsehoods flipped on their head, with my Google and DuckDuckGo searches on the internet. Like, what are you going to do? That's the information now? It's unreal. So I did go to the library, and very quickly I learned about radio frequency radiation, radio frequency waves, and that everything wireless that we have is on radio frequencies. There's a spectrum of radio frequency waves, and it is light waves. We can only see 1%, and we can only hear 1% of what's actually around us. It's unreal. There's a whole spectrum of audible and visual that we can't see because of our limited perception, with our limited, like, we're not dogs, we can't hear all this stuff. We're not bees, we can't see, and even infrared, you know? There's things that even bugs can see that we can't, and animals can hear that we can't. Just imagine what's beyond what they can see and what have you. So, for instance, one thing we need to learn about is blue light. Blue light disrupts our circadian rhythm and can make us depressed and suicidal. And it's really simple if we learn about it, because blue light is close to ultraviolet, and it confuses our bodies into thinking we're in sunlight. And our biological clock, which is our circadian rhythm, which can be tuned to the Schumann resonance, the frequency of the Earth, which is about 7.83 hertz. Okay, you want to have it intact and clicking along at a perfect tune. Your clock needs to be tuned. It needs to be in a rhythm. We are beings of frequency, beings of rhythm. If you don't believe we're beings of frequency, just try to not tune your body to the sky clock and don't sleep for a few days, or sleep during the day instead of the night. Your clock will get totally thrown off. Your body knows what time of day it is based on the sky clock. And if you start to confuse it with blue light and LED street lamps and LED this and that and blue light coming off of your devices, every time you're in this light, the blue light, the screens from your devices, every time you're even in EMF field, like a Wi-Fi router and whatnot, or your phone, your body doesn't understand because your ancestry never had any of this, and it computes it as light. It is light just like we can't see. It travels at the speed of light. It has essentially the same exact properties of light, just we can't see it. Just like infrared, we can't see, and ultraviolet, we can't see. It's just because it's outside of this Roy G. Biv color spectrum, this very limited spectrum that our eyes pick up. So our bodies, our endocrine system, our skin, our pineal gland, all of our body pulls in this light that is radio waves from Wi-Fi or your phone or whatever, or the blue light. We're basically talking about the same thing. And then our body thinks it's noon. So it calibrates our clock to it's bright, bright sunlight. It must be noon. And you don't want your body to calibrate the time of day to noon when you're right before going to bed at like 10 p.m. or whenever you go to sleep. So that's why it's important to get a blue light filter app. That's why it's important to turn off your phone, put it on airplane mode, throw it in one of my Faraday Sparrow cell phone bags that I have for $25 on my website, by the way. And Craig, send me your address, by the way. I'll send you one. Sparrow, S-P-E-R-O is the name of the company. SparrowApparel.com or Sparrow Protection Clothing. Protection clothing is what it is. It's Silverline clothing, Silverline cell phone bags, and hats, and maternity wear, and all this stuff. But 5G. So we've got radio wave technology, and that's what it all is. And it's essentially light. It travels at 186,000 miles per second. 186,000 miles per second is the speed of radio waves. And that's the speed of light. They're just like light, just a little different size than light. If they were the perfect size of light, then we'd see it in our color spectrum, like the light that we pick up. So the size of the radio wave spectrum ranges from 1,000 feet all the way down to a millimeter. And we carry data on these waves, right? So the largest carrier wave is 1,000 feet, and that 1,000-foot carrier wave is AM radio. I talked about this last time. I was just learning about it when I talked to you last time. So the FM radio wave is 10 feet in wavelength. That's the size, the length. And that's from crest to crest of this wave. That's invisible to us. But from peak to peak between each wave, that's the length, the size of the wave in measurement. And the length of an AM radio wave is 1,000 feet. An FM radio wave is 10 feet. And these big waves travel great distances and go through houses and trees and people and don't really impact our cellular biology or anything like that, especially because the cell towers or the radio tower is super far away. Imagine that radio antenna that's on that hillside 100 miles from your house emitting that AM radio wave. Imagine it as a big, bright light, and it's shining this light, like a little sun over there, basically. And the light's traveling up and down and far away. Like if you're in an airplane, you can even pick up the AM wave. So it's traveling everywhere, but we can't see it. But if we flip on our AM antenna inside our house or in the mountains or whatever, we can pick it up because that light is traveling that far. If we had the right eye, we would see the light, like it would be bright and it would be traveling. And we, you know what I mean? But we just can't see it. So just like that, FM towers and cell towers and even Wi-Fi routers are emitting light that we can't see, but our bodies are built and designed to absorb the light, right? So the absolute smallest radio wave that exists is 1 millimeter in size, which the width of a penny is 1.5 millimeters. We're talking less than the width of a penny. So what's the size of, like, Wi-Fi? Well, Wi-Fi is about, like, half a foot. It modulates in size, which is actually a problem. You don't really want to be in the room of a Wi-Fi router or that close to it because its modulation actually is problematic, and it actually does split DNA and split cells and, cause some damage over time. And like I said, it disrupts your circadian rhythm, throws off your clock and all that sort of stuff. But the size isn't that bad because, Wi-Fi goes through walls. We all know Wi-Fi goes through walls, right? It's pretty much common sense. So does 4G, so do smart meters, so do baby monitors, so do wireless ham radios, wireless telephones, even Bluetooth. All of this is radio frequency radiation that we should avoid, but it's nothing compared to the radiation of a 1 millimeter size wave. So where did the 1 millimeter size wave come from? Well, it's used in body scanners, and it's used in the military to create this active denial system, 1 millimeter size frequency fence, because tuned perfectly the 1 millimeter size wave, because it absorbs, and this is the biggest thing. We're going to go back to this. This is like the biggest thing to take home. It absorbs. These other waves don't absorb. That's why they are used as carrier waves, because they don't absorb into things. That makes sense, right? Why would you have a carrier wave that absorbs into everything it hits, including clouds and bees and people and babies and all this sort of stuff? It's actually pretty predatory, kind of like blue light and LED street lamps getting put right out front of my house that are telling my body that it's sunlight all night. Like, my body was so messed up and I was getting depressed and I couldn't figure it out. All I had to do was get blackout curtains and I can get my serotonin, melatonin, dopamine all back on track, right? Just an LED street lamp emitting blue light, which is basically like UV light, was telling my body it's 6 a.m., the sun is up. The whole time I was sleeping. And I kept waking up. I'm pretty sensitive. I'm really sensitive, actually, to light, because we're all light beings. And I kept thinking the time of day, you get it, my circadian clock was completely thrown off. So the 1 millimeter size wave is used in the airport body scanner. So what happens when you go in this body scanner, which I recommend never doing, is you're blasted with a 1 millimeter size wave that absorbs into your body really quick, and then they create this perfect little map of your body, because they can tell by blasting you what the shape of it is based on the wave size. And they can create a visual map, basically like a whale can shoot out the sonar and know exactly what's going on based on the wave. But the waves of the whale are really big and they bounce back. These absorb, so it's kind of different, but the same, because you can get a visual picture. So if you got like a razor blade pasted to your back, because of the millimeter size wave mapping of the airport body scanner, they can tell, right? Well, they say that the TSA employees right there working next to the body scanners are safe from this radiation because it absorbs right into everything. It doesn't go very far, right? Well, they're saying that there's cancer pockets in the TSA now and all this. Well, this is carrier wave technology that they're trying to introduce into our towns and our cities and our neighborhoods that has to have such a massive infrastructure because it absorbs. That's all we need to know, right? And so if it's the absolute smallest carrier wave in the radio wave spectrum, which is all we have for technology, that's it, right? And this is so simple. I just explained it all right there. We should know this. We should all know this. We should learn so much more about our lives and the seed and frequency and all these things before we even get out of high school. But we don't, because it's so easy and important and inspiring and empowering information. So there's no such thing as 6G, 7G, 10G, all of this information. There's no such thing as Elon Musk and satellites in space with the 5G. That doesn't make any sense. You can't push a carrier wave 1 millimeter size very far, let alone from space all the way down through clouds and stuff. It doesn't make any sense. But that is disinformation to get you in this falsehood, to get you disempowered. Oh, I shouldn't even fight the cell tower on my street because there's 20,000 satellites up there pushing the 5G signal around. No, it can't go more than 500 to 1,000 feet. That's why it's on my doorstep. So which is it? And then the 6G talk, that's to disempower you too. Oh, why fight 5G if 6G is coming? There's no such thing. If you really read these articles of 6G, they have no idea what they're talking about because there's nothing smaller than a 1 millimeter wave. There's no technology that would be 6G. They can call it 6G, but it wouldn't be like a progression of the size of the wave. It would be nothing like it. So long story short, sorry for all the time, 5G absorbs. And because of the size of the wave, when you're a fetus growing in your mommy's tummy, or when you're a sperm trying to just chill, or you're a human being trying to just develop, you don't want this tiny wave absorbing into you. This is how microwaves are literally set up. They absorb into stuff, right? So being in a 5G environment will be like being in a body scanner 24 hours a day.
That's amazing. That's also one of the coolest lines ever said on the show. When you're a sperm just trying to chill. Well, one thing it's always got me about 5G is looking at it from the perspective of just like radio frequency technology. It seems to suck to me because you need repeaters. So common, you're literally gonna litter the countryside with repeaters to even move this thing around. And from what I understand in Europe, where it's I think further along, they are cutting down old growth forests, and they're cutting down trees that are hundreds of years old in communities because of 5G, because the repeaters suck. So have you ever encountered that? Like I've always questioned when it comes to 5G. It's sold as faster or better, but basically it seems that as a technology, the expense of rolling it out is phenomenal because just how many repeaters you need to get it around a neighborhood.
Well, the Internet of Things is what they're calling it, and what they need for this infrastructure to work, which they've actually been deploying it for quite some time. We've got smart meters. That alone, if there's a smart meter in every house that can propagate the 5G wave, well, there you go. Also, they're equipping toaster ovens and dishwashers and all this stuff. The thing about the health that I wanted to really run home is the 1 millimeter size wave really will impact things that are 1 millimeter in size. So if you're developing baby in a mommy's tummy, these reproductive capabilities, we won't be able to reproduce if we are being conceived, born, and raised in a 5G environment. So it's really important to protect pregnant women and then the children while they're developing in this environment, because when you've got like a little heart and a little brain and this 1 millimeter size wave is out there, yeah, you're in big trouble. And the trees, yes, they're chopping down the trees so they can roll out the infrastructure to make it easier on them to propagate the wave. But get this, the part of the 5G infrastructure that a lot of people don't realize is that phones, all of the new 5G phones, they become repeaters. They become small cell towers. So right now, it's like I send a text message, and that message hops on to the light wave that's all around me. That's 4G or 3G or whatever, and it rides it over the cell tower, and bing, bang, boom, it goes, wherever it's going, right? It doesn't involve my neighbor's phone or the phone of the guy walking down the street right next to me. But 5G, it just relays among everything it can get its hands on. So if you've got your phone and somebody's downloading a video next door, it's relaying through you, through everything, through your toaster oven, everywhere it can go because it can't go far, so it has to grab out. You get it? So it's this bespoke technology where it's this array of signals. So you're getting way more radiation because you're getting all of the information that's going around the entire area that you're in, just to segue it on to the next repeater, which is the cell phones as well as the little small towers.
So they're crowd surfing the signal, basically. The propagation of the signal is now crowdsourced to your phone. Well, one of the things that always got me about 5G and wireless technology in general is, like, I grew up. My dad was he back in the day when he was young. He was in the Navy, and he was an ET, electronics technician. And so he'd work with all kinds of stuff, and all kinds of crazy stuff. And what gets me is it's only until the advent of the cell phone, or I should say, it was always known that radio frequency was bad for you, regardless of what it was. I mean, now of course, yeah, like AM and FM, the radio tower is far away, and it's a relatively weak signal. It's very, very wide, and it doesn't tend to hurt things. Of course, if you climb an AM or an FM antenna, which some people have done, they jumped over the fence and climbed it to get a good picture. Well, they died several hours later, but that's different. The thing is, it's always been bad for us. Everybody knew that for a long time. That knowledge was just a fact until the iPhone came along, basically. So it's funny how quickly knowledge is erased. Our history is erased on the advent of the first really cellular device that where you need it to put the actual transceiver next to your head, because before then, where the technology kind of stemmed from was ham radio and the handy-talkie, the handheld radios. Well, you would have an antenna, which was on the base of the unit, that you'd hold out away from you. Then you had kind of like a trucker has, like a CB, like your little microphone, which you would put near your face. And so even the ham radio operators hold the handy-talkie away from their head and always have. So it's funny how this knowledge, this fact, has just been, it was deleted when the iPhone 1 came along.
Pretty easy when you can hand them their source of information along with it. I'm glad you brought up the knowing the history of it. Even just like weather modification and geoengineering, or weather modification in particular. This was common knowledge in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Oh, yeah, they can seed cloud, and oh, yeah, get out and vote with the front page newspaper. I've got all these old articles that people were getting out to vote for whether they were going to get rain or not. They knew that the weather was controlled then. But then we get to modern day, we're handed our source of information, and then they tell us what to think, and we lose our history. So the history of EMF radiation, microwave sickness, I've got this little list here that I made. Microwave sickness first reported in Germany in 1932. In 1954, the term radio wave sickness was coined as an occupational disease as radar personnel started to show symptoms of sterility and baldness. In 1971, the U.S. Naval Medical Research Institute concluded 2,300 studies, 2,300 studies. They really wanted to get to the bottom of what radio waves were. And in 1971, they concluded 2,300 studies which determined biological effects and clinical manifestation attributed to microwave and radio frequency radio wave radiation. Clinical manifestation attributed to these frequencies. Basically, you go to the doctor because you've got biological impact. That's what they concluded. So then in 1986, this is when a big shift in the understanding of radiation happened, publicly in the scientific community, not just with these studies in the Navy and whatnot. When Chernobyl happened, right, the Chernobyl nuclear power plant meltdown, 1986, the global scientific community learned that low-level radiation causes harm. Before then, it was just ionizing radiation, ionizing meaning enough energy to pull ions and electrons and cause heating, right? Basically, it's thermal. If it's thermal and heats the skin, it's ionizing radiation. These are all synonyms. So non-ionizing, non-thermal, not stripping electrons and ionizing and causing heat, that was always not a problem. No one even thought it was an issue, really, publicly. But then in 1986, people living around Chernobyl, they were getting impacts from non-heating radiation, radiation you couldn't feel. So then after that, the public knew that if you don't feel it, it can still accumulate, right? So in 1986, we knew this. And then in 1990, 4 years later, the EPA drafted a report recommending EMF to be classified as a carcinogen, citing 33 conclusive international studies linking EMF to brain tumors, leukemia, and other forms of cancer. That's in 1990. Remember, we don't even have the internet really yet, you know. And then in 1993, the FDA has a team of biologists that conclude that there's an EMF radiation cancer link. So then in 96, the FDA and the EPA, they're basically in 96, they're right there saying we've got to put something out saying that this is bad and we've got to monitor this and what have you. But we really didn't have this wave of cell phone technology yet. So then in 1996, right on the cusp of this, wave of tech, right? We went from pagers to look what we got now. Then so 1996, the FCC releases a statement forbidding the EPA, forbidding the FDA from researching EMF, proclaims they are now the sole authority on EMF safety. And then in 1996, under the Clinton administration, was the U.S. Telecommunications Act of 1996. And in there, it pushes telecom through, says they don't have to consider human health impacts. And really what they claimed was they were deregulating to push the technology so that they didn't have to compete with China and Russia or whatever. It was 1996. Nobody saw this coming. And then all of what we have to refer to now when the cities and local levels are trying to fight the wave of all these small cells coming into their neighborhood, the FCC says, oh, well, if you refer to the 1996 telecommunications, it's like, whoa, 1996? Are you serious? That's what you're referring us to when you hijack the entire regulatory body and said FDA, EPA, no thank you, us, the FCC, who has a revolving door to big telecom, right? And really it's just a spectrum auctioning agency. Now they're the sole authority on human health, and they're going to claim if we can talk about human health impact. No, that's not okay. So the state of New Hampshire recently came out and they said, excuse me, we're actually going to talk about human health impact, even though you say we're not allowed to, and we're going to, quote, establish a bill, a commission to study the environmental and health effects of evolving 5G tech. And what they do is they get this entire commission of scientists together, the state of New Hampshire, and they have them ask these questions. One of them being why the insurance industry recognizes wireless radiation as a leading risk and has placed exclusions in their policy, not covering damages caused by pathological properties of EMF radiation. Number two, why do cell phone manufacturers have a legal section in the device, within the device, saying keep the phone at least 5 millimeters from the body? You're not even supposed to hold these things to your body. Even the Fitbit and the iWatches say do not hold these right up to your body. There's all these different things here, all these lists of questions that they need to ask. I'm just going to read you one or two more.
Oh, go for it.
Why are the FCC radio frequency exposure limits set for the United States 100 times higher than countries like Russia, China, Italy, Switzerland, and most of Eastern Europe? So the U.S., through the FCC, has set the radio frequency radiation exposure limits 100 times higher than countries like Italy, Russia, even China. Okay? So basically, you go to China, and they say, oh, no, that's too much radiation. We have to turn our cell towers down. We don't want to impact our children, our people. But then that level of radiation, you take it to the United States, and you can be 100 times that level in the U.S., and that radiation level is supposedly safe. Okay? And same with all these other countries. This is not okay, and the state of New Hampshire is asking questions that the FCC says that we're not allowed to ask. But they're asking questions, and what's happening? Is the FCC rating the New Hampshire legal, like the town or the house in New Hampshire? Nothing's happening. They're allowed to ask these questions. The FCC is acting like bullies, and the local levels, like a mayor of a town, they don't want to make local headlines, and they're not qualified to even make these decisions and know the influence that this will have over time. You know, they're not specialists, right? Lastly, another question that they are told to ask this board in New Hampshire, why have thousands of peer-reviewed studies, including the recently published U.S. Toxicology Program 16-year, $30 million study, that are showing a wide range of statistically significant DNA damage, brain and heart tumors, infertility, and so many other ailments being ignored by the FCC. So the information is there. The research is there. You know, this isn't chemtrails. You know, we don't have this elongated, well-manufactured campaign to divide the public on even the terminology and what they see with their own eyes through all of these different things. Let me just say really quick, I did a little research on the propaganda machine because I was looking at Children of Men at first, 2006 movie, all of a sudden people can't have kids. Well, in a 5G environment, all of a sudden people won't be able to have kids, mind you. Okay, these children that are coming in now. So in 2006, this Children of Men movie came out. But look at this, in 2013, Snowpiercer, I had to watch it just from the beginning, and immediately the first scene is chemtrails, right? And what happens in the movie Snowpiercer is there's a train, and it's carrying the last remnants of humanity after an attempt at climate engineering in order to stop global warming has unintentionally created an ice age and killed almost all of humanity. So what happens is the planet heating up from global warming, and then they spray chemtrails and geoengineer, climate engineer to try to dim the sun, and they mess up and kill everybody. Okay. 2013 film, right? So you go back to some of this propaganda, and it really starts to speak for itself. But the normalization of this, like, 5G thing, it hasn't even happened yet. We don't have this campaign against us, so the people are scratching their heads and saying, but wait, I never wanted to live next to a cell tower. You know, that's why I moved here and bought this home or whatever, right? I didn't want to live next to a tower. So you're telling me now that I need self-driving cars and augmented reality? Like, my phone works perfectly fine. Me, I've regressed. I've got like a flip phone now, and I couldn't even do the show on the internet with you today. I wanted to go backwards. I'm doing it from my flip phone happily with a microphone, and I really appreciate it. And I'm wearing even my EMF protective silver line shirt, which I'm going to be coming out with soon. But if you know anybody that's pregnant, I've got silver aprons. And I'm not reinventing the wheel. These aprons have been sold in China 100 million over. It's just in China they have socialist, communist health care. They're worried about their children not being autistic, and they have even this one-child law that it's still prevalent. Maybe it's not enforced much, but they don't want their children to be a product of the system, to be autistic. And so it's very common practice to wear these aprons when you're pregnant. And the aprons are this silver material. It's these microfibers of nylon that are then coated in silver, and then the silver string fibers, really thin, are woven into a fabric that's all silver. And so all the material touching your skin is this antimicrobial, antifungal, anti-radiation silver. So what the studies have concluded, this has been researched in China, in Israel, Japan, Korea for decades now, right? But over here we call it EMF, give it a fancy word. I went to Asia, I tried to figure it out. Nobody knew what EMF was. They just call it radiation because they know, and they call it for what it is. And they've learned that basically four things: copper, steel, silver, and nickel. That deflects radiation really well. Also, if we had that lead-based paint right now, that'd be a savior. But we got rid of that because why? Kids were eating it. It seems funny that unleaded gasoline came out right then there, too. There was lead in the gasoline. Kids were getting sick. Imagine that. Neighborhoods were getting spewed with lead out of the back of cars. Kids got sick from lead poisoning, but then we lost our lead-based paint that would be protecting us from 5G. And at the claim that children were eating paint chips.
That's really something.
That in and of itself is,
yeah, how many kids actually have eaten paint chips? They will stick anything in their mouth, but eating paint chips. That's an interesting correlation there, getting rid of the lead and gas, and then also the lead and paint. And one thing about getting rid of the lead and gas is that actually, I guess lead and gas always was kind of dumb, but when we actually did overnight get rid of lead and gas, that devastated a lot of industry because engines were built for a long time to run with lead and the gas, and so when it went away, that just if one ever wanted to research something, that did devastation to a lot of industry because all of a sudden a lot of gas engines basically didn't work anymore. So it was actually quite a cold-blooded thing to do it so quickly. And then also we look at, and not to get off on a side tangent, but when it comes to manipulation like that, the farmers, so we are, this is not a good growing season, and one can have, there's different reasons why that may be or may not be, but it definitely is a terrible growth season for farmers around the world, but especially in this country, in Australia, and a lot of them would buy corn futures or grain futures. So if the growing season is going to be bad, they'll buy futures because the futures will be worth more. They'll make money. So a lot of big farmers, and even ones that aren't so big, will basically buy futures to compensate for the losses on a crappy growing season. And so all the farmers bought all these futures because of, hey, we're going to have any money coming in. It's going to be a loss this year. And then and I forget the government agencies that basically decide what the crop yields are going to be, but they blatantly lied and said we were going to have more. We're going to have a great year. And so not only were farmers looking at a year of no profit, now we have lots and lots of bankrupt farmers because of deliberate manipulation. So anybody who thinks the government's your friend, just keep that in mind. Well, something that you did mention, Gulliver's Travels. I didn't want to not mention that. So if they were fighting over the egg, what is the top and the bottom of the egg? Well, it reminds me of the Bhagavad Gita when you were saying that. You have, the same family fighting itself. And it's also Hong Kong that we mentioned we touched on really early in the show. What do you think about what's going on there? We definitely want to talk about your clothing that you have coming out because I think is amazing stuff. But first, I just want to mention, what do you think of what's going on in Hong Kong? It really seems like on many levels the fight I mean, you could say versus good and evil if you want, versus social credit score and natural humans living their lives. It seems like really, unfortunately for those in Hong Kong, which has happened many times throughout history, a big battle has been decided to be fought in their front yard, basically.
I think it's amazing, and I can really feel it. I've started to really be able to feel things really deeply. I don't know if it's just the age that we're in or if it's vibrating on truth or whatever it is, but my heart is open to the people, and whenever I see these videos I'm pretty proud of my YouTube channel, Matt Landman. I posted a Hong Kong video on there recently, and yeah, it's unreal. So what happened in Hong Kong was there's an extradition law. For people that aren't familiar, there was an extradition law put in place for mainland China. Well, firstly, Hong Kong is a little different than China. It was leased to China for 99 years from Britain. It's got a lot of influence from Britain, a lot of English speakers and what have you, compared to the rest of China. So this city of Hong Kong, an extradition law was put in place where the mainland of China could extradite, pull out people from Hong Kong based on crimes committed in Hong Kong, and then try them based on courts in China extraditing. So that's how this all started. Well, once the protests got really big and a lot of this social credit stuff got brought up and the AI got brought up and people started bringing out umbrellas so that the AI couldn't do the facial recognition from the street lamps, and all this protesting and recognition of other problems started to surface, China actually backed down and said, okay, we're sorry, we're not going to do that extradition law anymore. And the people of Hong Kong said, we don't care about you and your stupid extradition law anymore. We want some serious change. And you rolling out this insane social credit score system, where I read this story about a 16-year-old girl who got cut off from the system for over a year. She couldn't get on the bus. She couldn't access her money because the computer program, the AI system, okay, this isn't even a human making a judgment call, the system had deemed her, quote, untrustworthy. Why? Because her deceased father had been deemed untrustworthy based on petty crimes that he'd been accused of, right? A deceased relative having nothing to do with this 16-year-old girl going to university got cut off from everything, okay, because of an AI program. There's all sorts of stories like that where, oh, you spit your gum out on the street and we see that you didn't take your birth control pills, well, your point score is going down. Black Mirror is a predictive programming indoctrination series. You know, these things are really being unveiled in that show. So in Hong Kong now, we've got, I read, a couple million people. I read 25% of the city by math. I think it's 2.5 or 3 million people are part of this massive protest now. And some of it got pretty violent. Someone was lit on fire and someone was shot in the protest like 2 days ago, I read. So things are getting a little enhanced, a little crazier. I wouldn't be surprised if the Chinese government stepped in and did something really violent like they always do to try to quell. But the point is there. You know, how far can we let it go before the people say, excuse me, we're not going to live like robots? You know, I started to talk about the predictive programming before with the films, and the film Total Recall really keeps coming up for me. I went and re-rented it the other day, 1990 film. Schwarzenegger gets a chip in his head and never really goes to Mars. Well, now you've got Neuralink through Elon Musk. He's got this company where a USB port is literally put in your head, where you can get memories implanted in your head and be plugged into your phone and your car and this and that. But he's got this fabricated Mars journey where he shot a car into space that's obviously fabricated. I mean, this entire thing is so fake that he even said, yeah, it's so fake it must be real, pushing this test of people's discernment Either you believe his lies or you accept truth, right? You can either accept truth as the authority or authority as the truth, right? Believe what you're told or think for yourself and really resonate with your heart and your gut and see that a convertible shot into space with a mannequin in the seat, well, according to what we're told, that mannequin would melt, the paint would melt, and where are the stars, and, why does it look so fake? It's because we're being bamboozled, we're being tricked into a weird dystopian transhuman reality where people line up because Elon Musk smoked a joint with Joe Rogan, and they get a chip in their head and maybe an implant. Same thing went to Mars, and it pushes this exciting space journey. Well, excuse me, NASA has a budget of $52 million a day, okay? With that kind of money, you could come up with all sorts of really horrible CGI photos just the same, and what do you do with the rest of the money? Well, I don't know. It seems to be nefarious. So I'm not trusting the direction that we seem to be getting pushed, and I think this regression towards humanity and a balance towards nature and this push towards a human for life campaign. We thought it was going to be a chip, the mark of the beast was going to be a chip in people's wrists. People are getting USB-C ports in their heads because they love Elon Musk. They think he's so cool because he's, like I said, he smoked a joint with Joe Rogan. He's got SpaceX. He's got, the Tesla cars. And now people trust him with their lives. And really we need to take a step back and really see our humanity and see how far we've come based on what? This push towards this weird nostalgic programming where people defend things without even thinking for themselves. People will defend that car shot into space just like they defend the moon landing without even thinking about it because they were there for it and it was so cool. And how can you question something that is so nostalgic for them? Well, if you're going to use that as the foundation, that falsehood as the foundation for getting a chip in your head because some guy seems cool to you that don't even know, then I don't know what to say or how to tell you that you have to look into people's eyes and see their souls and know that we're eternal beings of love and light and that you don't need a chip, that you don't need to be part robot, that you're here for an experience, to evolve, to shed karma, all these things. But it's people's ego, I don't think that they called it the iPhone just out of coincidence. The I this, I that, it really stokes ego. And when you hand them a device that is not only addictive, like EMF radiation, it actually causes endorphins and dopamine to be released. People love their technology. And it went from a black and white TV to a color TV to a tablet to a smart device, and now it's coming into our bodies, and we're not even saying anything. Let's take a pause, people. I'm sorry, what was your question? Did I even answer it? Oh, Hong Kong.
That's fine.
Social. Listen to this. In Seattle, they're rolling out this Hong Kong-type AI at a public school where there's cameras put all throughout the public school, and there's an AI technology monitoring the children's heartbeat, the way that they breathe, and if they get out of line based on the AI, they're punished. I mean, it's literally rolling out in Seattle slowly but surely. We have to really question who we trust. And do you trust a monitoring system? San Diego rolling out thousands of cameras for facial recognition to have this. Why? First of all, have we been that bad? Are we that bad? Are these engineered false flag shootings gotten to the point where we need to be monitored to such a degree that we're in such a fear place that we can't say no to anything? I mean, the social credit will come here. Hopefully the revolution in Hong Kong gets to a point where it's an evolution of the mind and soul and people really to start to question. But we've got such a control of the information that we get. I can almost guarantee if Hong Kong did prevail, the majority of the people over here wouldn't even hear about it. We wouldn't hear the truth, and people would just keep on going over here until we reach some sort of threshold where we have to say no to some computerized 5G AI weather control. I mean, right now we've got drones controlling our weather. Is there an AI behind that, or are those humans pressing those buttons? Already I start to ask questions about just that.
It's hard to know. Well, it's something that you mentioned that it's rolling out in Seattle school systems, and that's always been a real point of attention for me was Seattle, because I lived there for a couple years, and I've never lived in a more bizarre place in my entire life. And that's where I kind of learned about the people being controlled, basically being mind controlled, because there is this sort of Stockholm syndrome, but it's something beyond that, where the reality that people are given that we should just through common sense realize is not correct. I witnessed there that exactly what Morpheus was saying was that, so many people are so inured, I think he used that word. So many people are dependent and of the matrix itself that they'll fight to protect it. And so it's funny you mentioned that that's where something like the AI in the school systems is being, rolled out, as being tested, because that was the place, and I've lived all over the country, but that was the place where I saw 100% matrix control of humanity. I know it's a very, very bold statement, but I've never been to any crazy-ass place like that in my life where people are fighting for the globalists. I mean, it really is a place where, in this country that I have seen, I think the globalists have won there. I think it's gone. Anyway, weird thing to mention. Well, as we move on, you did mention how, 5G is a thing that is kind of hopefully beginning to wake many people up who've never really quite taken notice before. But you mentioned how, people who've had vaccinations and their kids have been vaccinated. Let's say, well, my child seemed fine after vaccinations. They seemed normal. But it made me think right away. I had to make a note. Well, what is normal? How do you know what healthy is? I mean, if we look at our history, none of us are really very healthy compared to our hunter-gatherer ancestors, who were kind of naturally Olympic athletes, and now we all kind of look like butterball turkeys. So, and do you notice humanity in general looking a little ill? Is a question I would ask, because we went to Renaissance Fair recently, and I love everybody there. I love humanity. It's not a matter of that, but we noticed for the first time ever, man, people looked so tremendously unhealthy, overweight, and just in general sickly. I mean, it was this real critical mass. You could not notice how bad people looked, and it really was very heartbreaking, because for us, it's all about, we're working on body, mind, and spirit, and the getting of wisdom, and cultivating our supernal light, our fire. And, it's kind of like Sasha Stone, an interesting character, said. He says, you should really cultivate the ability to exchange the fire in your eyes with others. And then when you can do that, you will recognize untruth wherever you might see it, because you're seeing it from your soul, from the fire. And are you noticing humanity looking a little ill? Is it getting worse?
I love what you just said about exchanging the fire. I've had, even recently, been stuck in a low vibration, just having a crappy day based on whatever may be going on in my world. I've got this crowdfund and I'm trying to do all I can, but sometimes it's just like nothing is happening, right? And so I do get a little disappointed, but then I'll talk to or come in contact with that one random person. I'm at the print shop printing the flyers, and the print shop guy actually refused my money because he watched my movie Frankenskiesthemovie.com, and just that little exchange. Well, really, he's got these amazing eyes, and I can see like we're probably on the same path towards trying to help humanity and stuff like that. But there is that vibration that if you share it, you have no idea the impact that you can make in someone's life. Really, you can. And never doubt it, how much influence that you can have. And yeah, Craig, I've got on my whiteboard here, I just looked at it, says grocery store video, and I can't wait to really get this one done. And it's just a short video that I'm going to make walking through a Safeway or some normal grocery store, and everything's poison. It's poison, 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 fluoride, fluoride, poison, MSG, this and this. And like by the time I'm done going through every aisle of a grocery store, hungry or not, I end up with some organic bananas, and some organic raw cashews if I can. That's basically my trip to the grocery store. Maybe some organic little juice thing if they have it, but it's pretty easy for me to not spend a lot of money at the grocery stores because everything is some bright colored poison. So there is a systematic attempt to make us all sickly, and to what end? Well, we can't defend ourselves, think for ourselves, or resonate to higher frequencies or anything like that if we are crap, watching crap, absorbing crap, eating crap, all of it. And there's so many different layers to it all, but I'll talk about mineralization, and then we can talk about the food and the vaccines and chemtrails and stuff like that. But just mineralization in and of itself, okay, a lot of us are really low on minerals, and we're conductive, electrical beings of frequency and electricity, down to our cells, down to our nervous system. We need to be conductive. We need electricity going through us, believe it or not. We even need that aluminum, not the stuff in the sky that's being sprayed, but the plant-based version of it. Our bodies want it, the aluminum, the barium, the strontium, but the plant-based versions of it. That's why it's so bad that we're being sprayed with it, because we're absorbing it, being like, oh yeah, finally we're getting these elements that are no longer in our soil. So you mentioned our ancestry. The soil was so rich, you grow some winter squash, and it has all of this nutrients and vitamins and minerals in it. Mineral rich. Nowadays, it hardly takes anything to grow food. I say this every time. I'm sure I said this on the last show. Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. It's really all it takes. NPK, and you can grow crops. Well, what about selenium, which you can get in Brazil nuts? What about silver and gold and palladium and all these monatomic elements? What about all these different things that help us be electrical conductive beings of light? You know, we don't realize how important it is and what we're lacking. Even our organic food most likely doesn't come from soil as rich as the soil that is of our ancestry. You know, there's all of this monocropping, monoculture, even organic pesticides and different lack of crop rotations and different lacks of this and lacks of that. So minerals, for instance, one mineral alone we can talk about is magnesium, the central atom in the chlorophyll molecule. So get your leafy greens. A lot of us are deficient in magnesium. And again, I'm sorry to be repetitive, and I know it was like almost a year ago, and I'm still worried about saying the same thing. 54-to-1 ratio of magnesium to sugar. Whenever you ingest one molecule of sugar, your body takes 54 molecules of magnesium to process one molecule of sugar. So we get pretty deficient in magnesium pretty easily, and we don't get it that bioavailable, so we need to realize that. And then when our body is not up to speed on a mineral such as magnesium, we start to absorb toxins from our food and our environment and our air and our water and what have you, hopeful that it's magnesium, especially when it's similar to magnesium. So like when we're deficient in calcium and we're being sprayed in our air with radioactive cadmium, and cadmium is similar to calcium, we absorb the radioactive cadmium into our bones thinking that it's calcium, but if only we were up to speed on calcium, we wouldn't have absorbed that cadmium to begin with. So what we can do is empower ourselves with this easy knowledge and get mineralized. One thing that I do is organic wheatgrass shots. Wheatgrass has a lot of minerals, a lot of amazing stuff in it that we wouldn't usually get. You can also get water additives to remineralize your water. A lot of them come from Utah. We're lucky to have Utah because there's ancient forests that have been compressed into bioavailable minerals for us to drip into our clean water that we get that's filtered, that doesn't have fluoride and chlorine in it, and then we add these minerals, and we can get up to speed on some of these things. I've gotten mineral solutions that literally say aluminum on them, but it's plant-based aluminum. And so imagine I'm up to speed on this bioavailable plant-based aluminum, and my body's happy with this plant-based, not the heavy metal version. Then I walk out in this cloud of geoengineering aluminum spray everywhere, which, mind you, is a fire accelerant, which plays out in this whole fire game and the hoarding of humanity, corralling of humanity into cities. You know, these fires, we can make not windstorms on top of them. windstorms are being geoengineered on top of fires. Instead, we could be making rain. And also geoengineering campaigns are spraying aluminum oxide, barium salts, they're fire accelerants. But again, we're in the forest, we're getting sprayed with fire accelerants. We cannot absorb them as long as we're mineral rich. So that's just one game that a lot of people don't know about. And then, yeah, they're mineral deficient, but then also they're ingesting poisons. You know, these colorful foods, even just cereal like Cheerios nowadays has the glyphosate in it. Somehow glyphosate is still being put in our vaccine, still being put in on our food, but has been found in the court of law multiple times now to cause cancer. How is this still a thing? How did an herbicide, weed killer, toxin get into our vaccines? This is criminal, this is stupid, or we even think for ourselves. Come on, people. So the people out there, the people out there in society who aren't on that frequency of truth, who are doing the flu shot, ingesting the fluoride, there's a dual system there. Fluoride is actually a byproduct of making aluminum, so it comes from aluminum. It loves aluminum. It bonds to aluminum. And when you've got fluoride in your system and aluminum in your system, you've got a chemical reaction going down in your body, and fluoride will actually go past your blood-brain barrier into your brain, chemical reactions in your brain, creating Alzheimer's and dementia. And yeah, people look gray. They've also got their EMF devices and their Wi-Fi blasting them all the time. So they're accumulating radiation. They don't realize it. They're definitely not getting grounded, and they're not getting as much sunlight. Greg, like think about, you're in the desert. I'm sure you're getting less vitamin D because of the chemtrails. But up here in Northern California, I haven't seen the sun in a couple of weeks. And I'll get out of here. I'll go down to Arizona, or I'll figure it out, and I'll go into the mountains, and I'll get grounded. And I like to do saunas to get the toxins out. And I definitely treat my body good with wheatgrass and fruit and, you name it. And I even chelate to get the heavy metals out with spirulina and chlorella and all these things. But I'm on top of my game as much as I can, and still I get pretty bogged down by the lack of sun and all of these contaminants. What are you to do? You have to try your best. But yeah, definitely seeing people out in the world looking pretty gray and looking pretty ill. But look at what they're ingesting. I can't eat most food. I get ill. Like canola oil, for instance, ruins me for days. Not organic meat. I'll get so sick because I'm treating my body as best I can because I want to be here for a little while, and I want to try to elevate my vibration, to lead by example, all this stuff. Just the fact that even fasting and yoga and Dr. Sebi and alkaline diets and all these things are fringe topics, right? When I'm in line at the grocery store, if I end up at a grocery store that's not like the co-op organic thing and I'm at Safeway, the colorful nature of everything in and of itself, from childhood, these treats in the aisle, they're so predatory. And what's really sad, what I'm realizing, is the Snickers bar that I ate when I was 10 years old, it's got twice the ingredients and 100 times the chemicals than it did when I was a kid. So the parents that are like, oh, it was okay on me. No, this is different. We're in a different world now. High fructose corn syrup with all of these chemicals in it, it's not the same as it was when we were growing up. These times are changing.
And that's really something to say that, the Snickers bar is shit. But it was less shit when I was eating it. It's like at least it was less when I was eating it. And that's really something. Well, you mentioned being a little down recently. I think we have had one of the most horrific Mercury retrogrades that I've experienced. And so it ends on the 19th and the 20th. So actually the tail end tends to be the worst and the beginning. So I know here at Radiant Creators headquarters, it really these last couple 2-3 days have been just, we're not really two people that tend to drag our asses around, but it has been happening. It's been a little bit challenging. And I love that you mentioned that the grocery stores are full of brightly colored, dazzlingly colored poison, because they really are. I go to Safeway myself. Sometimes, really, but there's a few things I'll get there, and it's the same way. Walking through the safe, well, I don't want to be specific, but a grocery store in general, it's we have the same experience, like poison, 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 blah, blah, blah. And you're like, where is the food in here? You feel like you're sitting here in this like huge warehouse full of food, but it's literally all not only not good for you, it's poison. And you're like, you're looking for that like 2%, maybe over here in the organic aisle, that isn't just blatantly poison. And that's very true where people are gray. Here in Scottsdale, it's a bit of a retirement community, but I'm not sure so much a retirement community, but as people who've lived here for a long time, we have a tremendous number in some areas of the baby boomer generation. Love my boomers. They're wonderful. I admire their lives. If you just did what you were supposed to, everything worked out. So I kind of envy them a little bit. But at the same time, they are gray. There is this unnatural gray color to the skin. And you look at them and go, man, I am not going to age like that. So I'm going to be, definitely eating my organic produce too. And also, when it comes to getting the minerals through what we eat, I mean, here we are big into hydroponics and microgreens and such. And so even though that's indoors, you can grow extremely potent organic superfoods right there in your house. And that's one thing I would definitely recommend to people. If you so desire, look into microgreens. Easiest thing to grow ever. You don't need grow lights or anything, and you can grow it in super organic soil with super organic liquid fertilizer. And every salad can have some superfoods on it. You can have a big old bowl of broccoli sprouts and sunflower sprouts, and microgreens are where it's at. You mentioned a movie called, was it Snowpiercer was the name?
Yes.
Snowpiercer.
Unbelievable.
I definitely want to link to that in the show notes, Snowpiercer. And one thing I definitely want to link to, in fact, I want to put on the front page of Radiant Creators is your new clothing line, because the cell phone little satchels are very, very great, because we should be walking around with our cell phones either off or in airplane mode and in the little Faraday cages that you're offering. And I really like the baseball caps that you guys are offering, because there are other manufacturers that make baseball caps that are similar, but their prices are ridiculous. And your baseball cap that you're selling, it's stylish and it is, ravishingly affordable, and people should definitely be giving that as that incredibly unique Christmas gift, because the price is right to actually buy them, where most the other manufacturer too that I know, their cost is just cost prohibitive. It's ridiculous. But you're actually creating products that people can afford, and I think definitely should be, as we move into the holiday season, giving us Christmas gifts. So I know we're going to be pushing that and promoting it, because we think it's really important. And Ken, as we wrap up, I know I've had you for a while, I've had you hostage, but can you talk about your new clothing line that's coming out?
Thank you for that, and thank you for the awesome introduction. So the other hats that exist out there, they're not lined with this silver material. Some of them have like a nickel or a copper or something in between the fabrics. The silver is the best. As far as I can tell, it's the one. It is in China. Like, I thought I was going to have to reinvent the wheel, really. But then when I found out that it was really just a matter of we were being limited by the information sources, we weren't being told what the rest of the world was doing already for decades, then it became self-evident, okay, if tens of millions of these silver aprons for maternity have been sold in China to prevent their children from being autistic, because they only get one shot and they only get one child and they don't want an autistic child, then I can sell these over here and protect some people, And I'm not trying to make a bunch of money, although any money that's made goes into it like a nonprofit to roll out further activism, further product lines. So this time next year, for instance, I'll have a hooded sweatshirt, I'll have a hooded baby silver onesie, I'll have baby blankets, I'll have men's underwear, women's camisole, T-shirts for men and women. I'll have it all. I'll have a beanie, I'll have different colored caps. I'll have it by 1 year from now when the 2020 rollout is happening for 5G. But in the interim, I have what I have. I've got beanies coming in. I've just ordered them. They'll be here by Christmas. Black and gray. I have these caps. The blue ones I have the most of. Please help me sell the blue ones. They're amazing. I've had a man call me crying because he's very much compromised. He's got a compromised blood-brain barrier. He's electro-hypersensitive. He couldn't leave the house, and now he can with these hats. They do work. It's protecting your brain from this radiation that's all around you, right? And if you're walking by cell towers and being in this soup of radiation, I think it's important to minimize what we're getting, especially going into this 5G world. So yeah, the hats are $40. The cell phone pouches are also lined with silver. Everything Sparrow is lined with silver, and that's why the marketing slogan is, wherever there is hope, there's always a silver lining. And the silver, like I said, is antifungal, antimicrobial. It's quite amazing, and I see it as the future of clothing. So please check it out, Sparrow, S-P-E-R-O, which is a Latin word for hope. It's actually an Italian surname. Okay, and I'm actually going to be making the logo a little bit more different to embody the family crest, protection, like shield, armor. But for now, I'm just happy that I was able to get the company up, the website up, the clothing coming, and I've got, like I said, the maternity aprons. Please, if you know anybody pregnant, the maternity aprons will be around $45, and they're these elegant silver aprons that even if you're not pregnant and you're expecting, or you just want to protect yourself as a woman, you can wear underneath your clothes. And it's just like I'll have pictures up soon. I have limited inventory on a lot of it, but not the hats. So please, I'm happy to get the hats out there in the world, and then you'll be repping this product and helping it along. The future of clothing, Sparrow Apparel, thank you so, so much. And yeah, I really hope that this concept can proliferate. It's not about me making money. It's about the concept coming into the consciousness. I pray that LL Bean and Eddie Bauer and everybody and their mom steps up to the plate and starts offering this as a solution. Different companies can come in and compete with me, please, God. Come on in, let's do this. All the rising ships will help protect the people and bring this awareness to the people, because everyone in the United States should at least be aware that this clothing line exists, and we can have at least a few men's underwears out there so people don't get testicular cancer. You know, John McCain held his phone to his head, got a brain tumor there, admitted that's where I hold my phone, I got a brain tumor there, got the brain tumor removed, then got another brain tumor there and died. You know, the awareness is coming to a level where I feel that the clothing can even help bring that awareness even further to the consciousness by promoting protection. You know, this is a non-violent, proactive approach to this really fear-based 5G rollout, where what's the opposite of fear? It's hope. And so, as I said before, the English language, I feel, may have been compromised. But Latin, this is a Latin word, also an Italian word, Sparrow, which means I hope. And it's also a surname, a last name in Italian, which I'm also Italian, so it kind of plays out. But yeah, I really hope that the idea can be proliferated. If you can't purchase an item or share the website, just talk to someone about it. You know, just bring the awareness. Say, did you know that there's a clothing line being introduced that protects people from radiation from this stuff that's coming out that exists, and people can actually talk about it. And like I said, I really hope that soon there will be multiple companies coming out with this to bring the consciousness levels up and the protection to the children, to pregnant people, to even adults, because we deserve it. And what are we going to do? We can't get violent. We can't bring fear and fight them with fire. You know, we can do what we can to put in ordinances and prevent it from coming into our neighborhoods and our playgrounds and our schools and whatnot. But when it does come, which it will to some cities and whatnot, we need to protect ourselves, because it is problematic and it does absorb, and we don't want to be treated like lab rats. This is experimentation on humans without consent, and we can at least protect ourselves with this empowering, inspiring knowledge. And on my website, we can learn also about Schumann resonance and a lot of different other things. I've got a blog there, and I'll be always improving the site, so please bookmark it, check it out, and look forward to further expansions on the product lines, and thank you.
Oh yeah, and the Schumann resonance definitely has been spiking, and I myself definitely seem to notice it. It is a fun thing to follow. So follow Matt's blog, and I agree that hope is definitely what is required for people to invest in the future, to sacrifice some things in this very moment for a greater future. People need hope. And so I think a sparrow is a perfect name. And silver is magical. I mean, it wasn't that long ago when the Romans, when they were traveling across vast expanse of lands, unfortunately, usually to commit genocide, but regardless of that, they would put silver coins in every barrel of water because it would keep the water pure, even in a danky old nasty barrel of water. So silver is magical. Definitely, I think the hats are amazing. I'm going to get one, and I'm going to be giving them out for Christmas, and I hope everybody else does too, because and I can say that the aprons that you're selling for that price are amazing because it's something I've been researching, and I can say that Matt's definitely selling them for about what the fabric costs. So, let's get this message out there. Let's keep getting Matt's message out there. Thank you, so much for being on the show. I look forward to in a little while catching up again, and it's been great. Thanks so much.
Thank you, and I appreciate what you're doing, and I hope that everyone out there can elevate their frequency by empowering the truth and honoring the truth with integrity and knowing that if you live the truth, then you will be elevating a higher vibration and your life will be elevated in every way. So thanks for listening and have a nice day.
You are listening to Radiant Creators, a collaborative project composed of people whose passion, purpose, and dedication requires forging their own unique path of empowerment and livelihood. A radiant creator isn't making a living, they are living.